who often see life's purpose as transcending the things that we can't control, our limitations, the things we lack. They see life as overcoming the fear, the fact that we are small, instead of learning to embrace it as good. But here's the thing that Jesus shows us over again in the Gospels, that the real problem that we face as humans, it's not limitation, it's isolation. For when we are isolated, it's almost impossible for us to come anywhere close to realizing our full potential, to celebrate God's creation, to enjoy the gift of one another. We thrive as human beings not when we're rich, not when we have too much. We thrive when we do life together. We thrive amid community. We thrive when we cooperate, when we participate in partnerships where people are equal and treated as such. In other words, we thrive when we celebrate communion. And do you know the saddest thing about those that misdiagnose the problem as limitation and not isolation? It's the fact that most of our attempts to overcome our limitations actually have the effect of also isolating us. They increase it. They cause us to insulate ourselves from God's beautiful and mysterious world that is all around us. They lead us to put up walls to protect our stuff, to protect our lives. That's what the story of Adam and Eve vividly show us. Adam and Eve try to solve the wrong problem, to overcome our human nature. They want to be like God. And the byproduct of this is that both Adam and Eve become more isolated from one another, more isolated from the land, and more isolated from God. For example, if you have great wealth, great property, great possessions, often people quickly stop being viewed as potential friends or helpers. And on the contrary, they become viewed as threats or enemies who could rob or burglar or steal what you have. Instead of looking at friends with hope, you start looking at strangers with fear. Quickly, you start to defend your property with alarms and fences and dogs. And you find that you don't know who to trust because you fear that everyone who meets you might want what you have. You get further and further away from real human contact with the people who you pay to make your life better. And it gets harder and harder to find genuine relationships and friendships with them or anybody else. So, of course, when this happens, you find it difficult to imagine sharing your surplus because you've avoided getting to know anyone personally. And everyone now is viewed as a threat. This is how wealth can make you forget God and thus live in a fantasy of your own immortality. And meanwhile, wealth can make you forget other people and thus force you to live in a prison of self-sufficiency. Sure, money can help you overcome limitations. There's no doubt about that. It can make you live longer. It can make you have a bigger house and make you feel strong. But it often comes at the expense of friendship, of real relationships. The poor, the hungry, the weeping, the excluded, they don't have the luxury of not needing other people. Other people is often the number one resource that the poor have. So they are well advised to keep on pretty good terms with them because they know that they're going to need them sooner or later. Because things always seem to go wrong when you don't have enough. When the poor, the hungry, and the excluded, when they lose those relationships, when they become isolated, and that's often when things go drastically wrong. Isolation, not limitation. That is what often prevents us most from thriving. Importantly here, Jesus never says you can't be rich. Like I said, I don't see Jesus' words in the Beatitudes as prescriptive. They're just describing reality. The poor, the hungry, the crying, the weeping, the excluded, they are just closer to where Jesus dwells and the life that Jesus longs for all of us. They also know vividly that the real problem that is plaguing us from living abundant lives is isolation. But that being said, there doesn't mean there's not a lot of bad news for the rich based on Jesus' words, and not just bad news for the life to come. It's just as much bad news in the here and now. Bad news that says wealth can easily put you in a fantasy land at best and a prison at worst. So what's the good news? Is there a gospel for the rich? To answer this question, we need to ask a searching and fairly fundamental question. And the key question is this: what is money for? And when I look at Jesus, at least the Jesus in Luke's gospel, the one we're wrestling with today, the one who makes us squirm, the one who really challenges us to rethink the purpose of money, I think Jesus teaches us that money is about two things: helping others and friendship. In next week's text, we'll find Jesus continuing on in his sermon on the plains. And in this section, Jesus will say something that I find even more challenging than the woes that we heard today. Here's what we'll find Jesus saying next week: give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Once again, Jesus doesn't give any outs. No way to escape the difficulty of his words. No stipulations are given. No best practices for helping those in need. Give to everyone who begs from you, Jesus says. And if anyone takes your goods, don't ask for them again. Here, Jesus doesn't say it's wrong to be rich, right? You can have things that you can give to others. But Jesus does say that we need to be exceptionally generous to everyone who needs something that we have. We are called not to be beholden to the desire to grasp after, to cling to the blessings and the wealth that we do have. We're called to give without expecting anything in return. And if people do take, we don't ask for it back. What I see Jesus saying here is that money isn't meant to be understood as something that creates a transaction. No, it's meant to be something that can be used freely to further the lives of others. It's meant to be a tool which can plant seeds of hope in the lives of others and the world around us. In other words, I think here Jesus is trying to say that the purpose of money is to decrease my and others' isolation. It's not to help us to combat the misdiagnosed problem, the problem of limitation. It's not to help us be more strong or powerful or healthy or safe or secure. It is to help us to enter into the presence of others, particularly others who aren't like us, if we're rich. And it's also to enable them to enter into our presence too. So we are to give to anyone who asks, Jesus commands. This leads me to the second thing that Jesus says about money in Luke that I think builds off of this. In Luke 16, Jesus insists that we are to make friends for ourselves by means of the mammon of injustice. For when our money is gone, your friends may welcome you into your houses. I hear Jesus saying here that the point of money, the point of capital, is to build our social networks. It's to enhance our relationships, our friendships. And this is opposite to how our world works. Our world teaches us to cannibalize our social relationships to accumulate money, to prioritize work over friendship and community. But I hear Jesus stating here that our economic systems and our practices, they must always be subordinated to our social interests. We must not act to safeguard our individual interests in the possession of material goods. We are act to safeguard our social standings, our social claims, our social assets to build our relationships with everyone. Material goods are only valuable if they serve the goal of building out our friendships. So stop being so busy to sustain friendships and community, and stop being so anxious about your network, and care more about the fate of the poor and how your money can help the friends around you. So here, through these both, what I think Jesus is trying to say is that if you're rich, your responsibility is to handle your money subversively, to support endeavors that subordinate the economy to our social interests and the social interests of the world around us. And if we do this, I'm fairly confident that if we give to those who ask, and if we see money as a tool primarily about friendship and not about retirement and saving up things for ourselves, then we're quickly going to discover new ways in which we are poor, new ways in which we're hungry, new ways in which we need to weep for our world, for our friends, for the poor that we interact with on a daily basis, and new ways that we are excluded as we wrestle against the isolation that our society creates every day. So here's some questions that I find myself wrestling with as I ponder Luke's difficult Beatitudes and Jesus' teachings on the purpose of money. These are for me. Maybe they'll be questions for you. How reluctant am I to lend my possessions to others? Because I think willingness to be generous is a pretty good indication for how much you recognize everything that you have is ultimately on loan from God. Am I constantly looking out for ways in which others can enjoy what I own? Or are my possessions a wall that insulates me from the strange and dangerous world that is outside? Does my enjoyment, my flourishing, my entertainment concede with the joy of others, or does it come at others' expense? Does my wealth make me free and others free, or does it make me and others a prisoner? Are the things that I want most the things that everyone else can have as well? And finally, am I prepared to allow others to free me from self-deception by sharing the truth about my financial situations with my friends or even strangers and ask them for their prayers and their guidance? So back to my original question. Is there a gospel for the rich? Here's the best answer that I can give. Maybe.